Greetings from San Francisco. We are New Reality Company. My name is Winslow Porter.
And I'm Milica. We will be talking today about how we created our virtual reality project called Tree using Houdini. And also we will be explaining what is next for our company. Next projects called Breathe and Rainforest.
Great, so let's get right into it. As I mentioned, we are a New Reality Company. As it says right there, we are an immersive content studio with offices in New York and Los Angeles.
So Tree is a virtual reality project that premiered at Sundance Film Festival 2017. It also went on screenings at Tribeca Film Festival, TED Conference, Phi Center, World Economic Forum, and 50 other festivals across the globe. We will be telling you now how the Tree experience feels inside. So for us, VR is not just what happens in the headset, it's not just visual or audio, it's also what happens before you put the headset on and what happens after you go out of the experience, because we as creators are immersing you in a completely new world, and we have responsibility how we bring you in and out of that world. So in Tree, we wanted you to become a rainforest tree and first-hand experience what's happening to the rainforest trees across the globe right now. So because we are speaking about nature and climate change, and we are using all this latest technology, we wanted to incorporate something tactile and something connected to the earth. So before you put the headset on, we ask you to take one seed of a kapok tree and plant it in a soil. And once you plant it in the soil, you put the headset on and you realize that you became that tree. And the experience starts, and your body is this seed that you can see right now. And once the experience starts, you start growing. You start piercing through the ground. You start getting the body of a tree. So when you look down, this is what you see. This is your body, and your arms are branches. You enjoy the nature, the animals, butterflies, other plants, until you start hearing human sounds, and humans start entering the rainforest and unfortunately take all of it away from you. We decided to speak about this topic because unfortunately humans are destroying rainforests in such a fast pace that, according to latest NASA studies, in 100 years we are not going to have rainforest on this planet. And rainforests are known as lungs of the planet, so it's very important for us to make people, to convert them into trees so they understand firsthand what's happening. And for that we partner with an NGO called Rainforest Alliance, who does the work on the ground in rainforests across the globe. We worked with their scientists and biologists who helped us recreate this specific rainforest in Peru in a region called Madre de Dios. And we made sure to really accurately represent that part of the rainforest. We just chose that as just one example, and as I've said, this is happening all across the globe. Now you can see the video, which is the first minute and a half of how the experience begins. You will see how the tree is piercing through the ground.
Okay, so now we'd like to tell you a little bit about how we built the team. People say that spending too much time on social media is a bad thing. Well, I disagree. When we were actually in Busan, South Korea, showing Giant at the Busan International Film Festival, right before we went on, I decided to pull out my phone and sort of go through my Instagram feed. And as always, looking at the amazing work that is on the Unreal Engine feed, we were able to see the work of Jacob Kudsteensen, who does really amazing photorealistic environments. In this case, it's a wintry scene, but as soon as we saw that, the textures and the lighting, we knew that we had to reach out to him. So then I immediately, what's nice is that all this is documented on the walls of the Unreal and of his feed as well. So immediately, because he posted, and then Epic Games posted shortly after. I actually found the correspondence. I asked him, would love to chat about a collab. You currently in New York City? And then immediately he says, no, he's at a residency. He was actually in Idaho at the time. So when we first started the project, he was in Idaho. We were bouncing back between New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And then we also were working with some folks in Santa Cruz and also in Denmark. So we had quite the smattering of folks to be able to create the demo. But as soon as we contacted him, we scheduled a call when we went back to Los Angeles from Korea. And within 4 days, he was part of the team. And we were rushing to make the deadline to be able to submit to Sundance. And we basically made the demo in about a month and a week. And then once we got into Sundance, we had only about 2 months to be able to complete it. And here's a little bit more of his work. And yeah, he does a lot of things, sort of a nice mixture between sort of this sort of dystopic future, but with a sort of like a very organic feel as well. And yeah, he's an artist who is based, mostly in New York now, but is originally from Copenhagen. So obviously these projects, it would be great if these could be done, just with a few people in a few days, but it's not the case. It takes many people over, generally a prolonged period of time. We're still in the process of finishing Tree right now. People say that the last 20% takes 80% of the time, and that is definitely true. In this case, these are the major companies that we worked with Milk Visual Effects. They were actually the ones that suggested that we incorporate Houdini into our pipeline. We were thinking about how we could, the problem of being able to have basically a sprout that then turns into a fully formed tree, that could all be accomplished in Maya, but then how do we actually distort or be able to deform meshes as they're growing? And we first were looking into morph targets, but there were some inherent issues with them, and then we decided to go with Alembic, which was then allowing us to be able to grow it smooth over time. And we were able to work with an artist named Sylvan, who is at Milk Visual Effects, and he was able to craft these very elegant branches that were attached to sockets as the Maya files were going through. Basically through morph targets, we were then able to match that action over time, simulating what it's like to be, basically a small sprout or a seedling up until one of the largest kapok trees in the rainforest. We were also very fortunate to be able to work with Converge that did a majority of our integration and engineering, things that weren't directly related to the environment, which Jacob was working on, and things that weren't related directly with creating the tree rig. They were basically implementing a lot of the IK work that we had, and also making sure that it was being optimized and getting ready. So for everyone out there, we're going to be launching through some of the popular location-based entertainment platforms coming next month. So we're really looking forward to telling you more about that. And also with Rewind, they were able to create the parrots that when you put your arms out, land on them, and then also the leafcutter ants. And Technicolor, just like with our support, they support us with Giant. They're also one of our partners helping with the sound with Scott Gershon, who we'll talk about later, and a lot of the optimization as well. And now you can look at actually how we were able to incorporate the Alembic support. Here you can see the arm just moving through space. We have free control of it using our controllers, but also, as you can see, it seamlessly grows onto it throughout our process of growing as well. And obviously you can never actually imagine what it's like to grow as a tree. So this is, we're taking artistic liberties, but to simulate, as close as we can inside a virtual environment. And just to help you guys out there who are maybe interested in how you can create VR, because you're adding a whole nother dimension, which means there's sort of more information and more, it can make things confusing sometimes, or complicated, I should say, when talking with developers. So we basically plotted out this bird's eye view, and we also created another way we were able to communicate height was basically by putting in a ladder that had different sort of depth marks, and we're using it like a clock. So then once we were able to just actually put, for when we were designing when the fires and the smoke were going to be, those different things, actions would be triggered on the timeline. You can see we used our touchscreen on our HP Spectre computers here to be able to write in the specific timings. And the black is when the black smoke is happening, and the orange is when the actual fires happening. And so this is a very simple technique, but really nice to be able to communicate this with our team at Converge, to be able to have it so that it's very specific as to how we can direct the experience. And then once you put all that together, we get this really nice photorealistic environment with really great lighting that's all done inside of UE4. And in this specific case, we like to have it feel as realistic as possible for a lot of people who haven't been in the rainforest, so that ultimately with more, that will allow to more immersion in this case, which allows the viewer to have a more emotional experience, which ultimately will be more impactful. And that, as our role as filmmakers, that is extremely important, to be able to tell a narrative that sticks with the viewer and ultimately allows them to be more conscious of, in this case, deforestation. And we couldn't have done it, we mentioned our, a lot of our partners already, but we couldn't have done it with all these folks. Basically, we get very creative with fundraising. Right now in VR, you have to be very scrappy because right now the market is still very nascent. So we were able to work with a lot of these people. Some of these were direct financial collaborations, and other ones were basically trading, marketing, or being able to use their software or hardware or their services as a means of sort of benchmarking. And a lot of people are really interested in getting in VR now, so we were able to offer them this project sort of to get their feet wet. They could share their expertise with us, and then we could also do the same for them. Also work with some different academic institutions such as the MIT Media Lab. They helped us with the haptics and also with ITP. And then also some amazing foundations like Chicken and Egg, Rauschenberg, and Fledgling Fund. And we couldn't also have done it without our friends at Droga 5 too.
And visuals are very important, but also sound. We use spatialized sound or 3D sound, and we work with Alexander Prodic, who is a composer, and about 15 years ago he made a musical composition called Nightmare of a Tree. And I heard it back then, and he just, through sounds, described the whole life cycle of a tree. And it stayed in my mind for these 15 years, and I called him back and I asked him, would you like to recreate this composition for our new piece called Tree? And he said yes. So he again took all the sounds of the rainforest and put them in a rhythm. So while the tree is growing, you are hearing this whole sound composition of a nature around you evolving. And there are no words in Tree. They're just, as I said, sounds of nature. And then later on we worked with Scott Gershon, who works for Technicolor Sound Lab, and he did final mix for Tree. And final sound design. So you can hear, so you can hear sounds coming from above you, underneath you, left or right, depending on where the animals or other plants are.
And so just like it's important to design the VR experience inside the headset, it's really important to consider your user. People will be approaching VR from many different backgrounds. Just like if you were to play a song to someone, they are taking all the other songs that they've listened to and using that sort of as a gauge for how it sounds to them. Obviously, this is not something that they are actively working in their brain, but it's more of sort of how we perceive new things. So a lot of this is sort of subconscious. But we want to make sure that the user experience is seamless, that as soon as they learn about Tree, that's where the experience begins. And oftentimes with VR, right now there's issues of scaling. We can only bring one person in every 10 minutes. So unfortunately, a lot of people won't get a chance to be able to see this at some of the major festivals or conferences. So we wanted to be able to have a projection, as you can see on the left, that happens where the tree is growing behind them so that it can still pique their curiosity. They can become interested in the project and learn about it more later, but also get an idea of what the narrative is. I think that there's people want to see what's happening inside the headset. So a lot of times in booths, there'll be a mirror of what the person's seeing in the headset. And we find that really spoils it because as our brains, as soon as we see something, we feel like we've already filed it away and that's it. But as soon as something becomes stereoscopic, immersive, and multisensory, then it helps us be able to even feel more like we're inside that world. So we prefer to have sort of an auxiliary experience happening while the person's inside the headset. But with that too, we want to mention that we're not just using the eyes and ears to be able to tell the story. We also trigger other senses with this. So for us, scent was very important. We were very lucky to be able to partner with International Flavors and Fragrances, We worked with a master perfumer named Laurent. And in this, these almost look like they're different, like sort of health or like some type of medical machine from the Dharma Initiative. But in reality, those are air compressors from a company based in Germany called Scent Communication. And each one is automated on a system where the first one is playing a sort of a peaty earth soil mix that smells amazing. When people immediately, as soon as they're greeted, their olfactory is telling them, hey, this reminds me of being in the garden with my grandmother when I was 8 years old. It's amazing how closely scent is triggered with memories. And then the second one is when they burst through the soil, they're greeted with a fresh cut foliage smell. And then the third one is unfortunately the smell of smoke. Spoiler alert, that happens at the end of the experience once you're greeted with the sound of humans. But there's also, as I mentioned, we work with the MIT Media Lab, the Fluid Interfaces group, but also some folks at ITP to be able to help us bring the haptics to life. It almost seems like Home Depot was one of our sponsors because we ended up getting a lot of different, basically off-the-shelf components, which when used at the right time, really help bring the experience to life. When you're a tree, you grow to be in your fullest form. When you're the tallest tree in the rainforest, you're greeted with this amazing wind, which then is accompanied by the vibration from the subpacks as well as the heat from this Honeywell heater on the right, which unfortunately is the fire coming towards us. But these elements really help immerse the viewer in that narrative so they feel like it's happening to them. Even though they might see the fan in the beginning of the experience, as soon as they put the headset on, they forget all about it and actually feel as though they are greeted by this wind, which is kind of like a bittersweet feeling before the unfortunate fate of that rainforest tree.
And as tree ends on this kind of negative note, we decided, because it was important for us to show the truth and what's happening in rainforest, but at the same time, when people take off the headset, they feel pretty hopeless, and they ask us, what can we do about this? Well, we actually created a gift for every member of the audience, and we give them this envelope, and inside of the envelope we put back the seed that they planted at the beginning, and the seed of a tree that they were, a kapok seed. It's now a seed of hope, and we put a message there saying, take this seed as a reminder to keep our forest standing. There's also our website that connects to the Rainforest Alliance website, where people can find out about solutions to this problem, because there are solutions, but we need to all act very quickly about that.
So when creating VR, it's important to be able to, we learn so much from the audience that comes through. Here we have Jenny Slate and David Byrne on the right, and this was her first VR experience, and we really love her work as an actress and comedian, and being able to see, that this had such an impactful, that it was so impactful to her, meant a lot for us as storytellers. And this is sort of why we continue to go to as many conferences. We just keep learning more. Everyone has a different experience. Everyone brings something different to the table, and we can use that to be able to refine Tree and ultimately for our future experiences as well.
This is a photo from a TED conference in Vancouver, and as you can see, we always, the setup of a physical installation of Tree is always different depending on the venue, of the size of the space we are given, or the number of days and the resources available. So we always adjust it according to that. To backtrack, the one project we did before Tree is called Giant. Giant premiere also at Sundance 2016. It was shown at Cannes Film Festival, New York Film Festival, and again went to 40+ festivals around the globe. Giant is about family hiding in a basement during war, and they hear all these loud noises of bombs, but they need to hide that from their daughter, so they start pretending that this is actually a friendly giant approaching their building, and who wants to play with their daughter. And we are witnessing those moments when everything is playful but terrifying inside that basement. For this project, we also were showing it in as an installation in a dark room, in a dark spaces, where we already kind of prepare you for what's going to happen inside the headset even when you enter this room. But we also used Houdini for this project as well. And Giant and Tree are part of the larger trilogy, where Breathe is a final installment. So Giant speaks about how we as humans harm each other. Tree speaks about how we harm nature. And breathe is there to remind us about our collective connectedness in this planet, and to speak about hope. Breathe starts where Giant ends, and this is the last scene of Giant. This destruction of the ceiling is done using Houdini engine by Uroš Otašević. You don't know what actually happens at the end of Giant because everything goes black. That's why Breathe starts from that moment where everything is black, and soon enough you see shafts of light appearing. You start moving your hands and you realize that you're able to move the rubble, that you're buried under the rubble. You are buried under that building that collapsed. But you start noticing that your arms are the arms of the 6-year-old girl from Giant. And you realize that you became her. You go out of this rubble, and the medical and doctors and fire department, journalists, everyone is running towards you saying she's alive. You start noticing that your city is destroyed, and as you start walking, you start aging. Then we follow her, or your path, for the rest of her life. We want to see who is she, and how was her path of empowerment coming from that rubble for the rest of her life. She eventually becomes a climate change scientist. But we want to show how the world is going to look like in the next 90 years, and how it's going to be shaped by climate change problems and wars, and what is our role in that world. And we will end Breathe and as a multiplayer experience where all the users will be able, with the power of their own breath, to create the whole universe and witness that creation together.
And so with this, with an ambitious narrative also comes ambitious pipelines. So we want to be able to imagine what it's like to be able to be Rose from being 6 years old, and use breath as a way to interact with the environment, as because people say VR is a good empathy tool, or it's an empathy machine, but if that is not your character, if you can walk through in somebody else's shoes, if those aren't your shoes, then that can feel like an alien experience. We want to make it feel like those are your own. So what are techniques we can use to make it feel like you are the first person character? And we thought a lot about this, and ultimately the human breath is something, obviously we're doing it right now, and being able to use that, it's ultimately how we stay alive. It's how we oftentimes interact with things, and it's something that we all have in common. So being able to use things like blowing a daffodil, or dandelion rather, those particles can spread to a wintry environment where all of a sudden you see your own breath. You find yourself underwater as a climate change scientist. You can hear the sound of the respirator. You're greeted with a surprise birthday cake when you're 60. You can blow out those candles. That feels like it's happening to you. And also another inherent challenge that we have, which we think will be really amazing, is every time you circumnavigate a column in the middle of the room, which will have sensors on it, to be able to track exactly where you are, basically your delta position. Every time you circumnavigate that, you are 12 years older. So as you become older, your hands grow, similar to what we did with Tree, but ultimately as you get taller, the scale changes, the environment gets smaller, and we find that this will be an amazing way for people to feel like they are Rose, that 6-year-old girl, until her final breath when she's in her late 80s.
We are so glad that we got the chance to partner on both of our previous projects, Giant and Tree, with Houdini and SideFX. And we also invite you to see our project. Giant can be viewed on Within app, and download is free. And Tree, we are planning to distribute it this year on major location-based places around the world, and also on the online apps. But stay tuned on our website, www.treeofficial.com.
And yes, we look forward to seeing how we can be incorporating all of SideFX's new tools into our next projects, in this case specifically Breathe, but we also have one called Rainforest, which we will definitely love to tell you about soon. Big things for the rest of 2018 and 2019, so thank you very much.
Bye-bye.